At the start of the year, Trump published this executive order, which is basically a way for the president to direct the government without running it by Congress first, although sometimes they can try and block them. And he announced a national emergency and said the actions of the government of Cuba constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat. And he says that Cuba's aligning itself with numerous hostile countries, transnational terrorist groups, and malign actors adverse to the United States. And he lists countries like Russia and China. And it's not the first time the US has been suspicious of China and Cuba. So, according to the Trump administration, Cuba does still pose an extraordinary threat to America's national security.
Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Cuba really doesn't have the capacity to pose any kind of national security threat to the United States. Washington has been concerned about the fact that Cuba has a good relationship with China and still has a good relationship with Russia. But those are primarily commercial rather than military relations. And so they don't pose any real threat.
But you can't really talk about Cuba in isolation. There's a bit of a pattern.
To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal. The United States conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. And I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it.
And those are just some of the countries that he's targeted since coming back into the White House last year.
I think it's all to do with President Trump's view, his world vision, his demand that the Western Hemisphere comes completely under his control.
Okay, Stuart mentioned the Western Hemisphere, and that's linked to something called the Donroe Doctrine.
The Donroe Doctrine.
It's a play on the Monroe Doctrine, and that was written by the US President James Monroe all the way back in 1823. I had to Google who that was. Monroe, Donroe, you can see where he's coming from. Monroe basically suggested that the Western Hemisphere, so from here back this way, was the US's zone of influence and warned Europe to stay out. Then in 1904, it was expanded to justify American intervention throughout the region. And Trump's made it clear that this Donroe Doctrine is his vision for America.
We got to have peace. It's our hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine was very important when it was done, and other presidents, a lot of them, they lost sight of it. I didn't lose sight.